So that was Dwight D. Eisenhower. What year?
1961. That was his farewell address as he was handing over the reins to Kennedy. So you can see that not only did an elite exist back then, and a military-industrial complex that sort of ran rampant after World War II and didn't, where he mentions at the beginning, turning your plowshares into swords, and they kind of never stopped making the swords. And people noticed this. Eisenhower is one of them, and he warned the people. So, if this was possible and known of, and these kinds of, obviously we saw conspiracies in the early 60s with Kennedy assassination. So the connections can easily be made through that period all the way up to 9/11.
Sure.
So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about if there is an elite, and if they do have a plan, what are some of their game plans? And this is the big game plan. This is it. Again, we're talking about a group of people that are inbred and ritual bound, and they don't have a whole lot of good ideas, so they're going to kind of do the same thing over and over and over. Especially if it works for them, they'll do it over and over and over. And this principle is known as the Hegelian dialectic, and we're going to listen to track 13. And the gentleman speaking, his name is David Icke, and he's a big guy in the conspiracy community. People he himself is a conspiracy, because some people think he's good in the conspiracy community, other people think he's bad, and there's a big argument over what people think about him. But anyway, he does a really great short breakdown of this this Hegelian dialectic. So you can hit 13.
Problem, reaction, solution. It's a mind manipulation technique that avoids not only opposition to what is the goal of the manipulators, it actually manipulates people to demand they do what they want to do anyway. You start by secretly creating a problem in the world. You then use the media, which isn't difficult, to wind up public opinion in relation to your manufactured problem, to the point where public opinion utters the classic words, "Something must be done. This can't go on. What are they going to do about it?" And at that point, those who created the problem and got someone else to be blamed for it wound up that public reaction, then openly in the public arena, in the parliaments of the world, in the newspapers and on the television, offer the solutions to the problems they have created.
So again, that's what's known as the Hegelian dialectic. It dates way back, I believe, to the 1800s, the philosopher Hegel. But more simply, it's known as problem, reaction, solution. And it's just that. You create the problem, you get the anticipated reaction from the public, they beg for the exact thing that you had planned on giving them, and then you solve that. You solve their problem by giving them the very thing that they would never have accepted had you not created the initial fake problem.
Absolutely, and especially with the masses, like people, especially in this country, can get pretty bored pretty quick. So you throw something like some fear into it, and
right, we saw that with H1N1, right? We saw a problem, a fake virus being thrown around the country. What we saw there was a failed problem reaction solution, where people didn't really buy into it. They said, you know what, I don't know about this. And thank God we avoided a very, very dangerous jab. The solution would have been, millions of people lining up to get jabbed with poison, and kids and children being, mutilated and ruined. So I think we're lucked out with that one, the H1N1. So hopefully the public is starting to get more and more savvy, and the elites now know that they can't pull off these false flags as easily as they could.
Yeah, and I think that's another really valid point to make, that this goes way beyond 9/11, because it's going into this kind of stuff which dates back centuries, where it's once the masses start to say, wait a minute, we're not going to take what you throw down our throat, then it becomes harder for them to come up with ways to manipulate us.
Right, and I'll bring this up now because I think this is a good way to help wake people up. If you look back to almost every big war in the world, almost all of them can be attributed to this false flag terrorism. So we really don't have a whole bunch of angry countries that are just fuming and bristling against one another, just on the verge of war, really at any point in history. What you have is a small number of people who know that war is very profitable, and they also like the fact that millions of people die during wars for any number of reasons when you talk about that. But really, a good chunk of the giant wars of the world are attributed to a small number of people that were just trying to make money off of it. We can talk about the Reichstag in World War II, when Hitler did false flag terrorism and burned and bombed his own government center, and then immediately responded by saying it was the Poles and marched on Poland. We saw that again in World War II to a lesser extent in Pearl Harbor, in that the Australians definitely decoded the secret messages that the Japanese were going to sneak attack Pearl Harbor. That information was definitely given to, I don't want to say specifically FDR, but probably a good chance he specifically knew it, and they intentionally did nothing because they knew that the emotional reaction of the Pearl Harbor attack would get the U.S. into the war. You see it in World War I, and where we were pulled into World War I through false flag terrorism with the Lusitania, the ship that it was decided between England and America that if how are we going to get America into the war? Well, if we sent a ship over there full of lots of American passengers and it got sunk, that would be enough emotional impact to get the United States ready to dive into World War I. And the Germans are on record. They published in New York and New Jersey newspapers, don't get on that boat. If you get on that boat and drive it where you say you're driving it into, waters off the coast of Europe and stuff, we will sink it. So it wasn't a secret that they were going to sink it. And on top of that, they filled the boat full of munitions and ammunition, illegally, of course, and that ensures the death of thousands of people. You see it in the Gulf of Tonkin. We started Vietnam through false flag terrorism. The gentleman's name escapes me. Robert McNamara is on record as saying, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was a fake report that the North Vietnamese had attacked ships in the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam. That was the action that actually precipitated the actual ground war in Vietnam. So most of our major combats and conflicts throughout history are attributable to false flag terrorism. And then, again, look at 9/11, and what are the immediate results of 9/11? Well, we have two unconstitutional, illegal wars that we've been fighting for, very, very long periods of time.
And not to mention the Patriot Act.
Right, Patriot Act 1 and Patriot Act 2. Two acts that do take away a good chunk of your civil liberties.
I believe still to this time your phones can be tapped without any kind of...
Yes, warrantless wiretapping.
Yeah.
Obama has not done anything to get rid of that. The torturing is still being allowed under Obama. Not that I'm sticking up for George W. Bush, but the president of change did not change as many things as I would have liked. And one last thing before we go on to the next quote, again with the problem reaction solution, David Icke mentions the using the media to manipulate, and how easy is that in our country? I mean, what is it, 5 major corporations that run 80-90% of our media? I don't know the exact statistics.
I think and with radio it's even less. I mean, that's why it's great that we have stations like this, but Clear Channel's pretty much mopped up everything within radio.
Well, thank you, Valley Free Radio.
Absolutely.